If you want the best proof that this white supremacist injustice system is indeed set up with two separate tracks, one for white offenders and then one for black people, consider this. A Georgia man by the name of Michael Wissolofsky was supposed to be having a long prison sentence, 10 years in prison, but he's never going to see the inside of a prison cell because you had, and this is a guy who was involved in a federal case, might I add, you had a judge who decided that just because he took a young girl who he met at the age of 15 online, no sexual predatory undertones there, he decided that he would bring her into his little BDSM shenanigans that he was doing. And he had this girl locked in a cage for a year and treating her like a dog. She had gotten sick, suffered what might be permanent damage to her back due to the fact that she was malnourished and she was kept in this cage for over a year. She also got ringworm because the conditions were so filthy, to say nothing of the sexual assaults that she suffered at the hands of this scumbag. This guy is the prototypical sexual predator. He was looking for children online. He made contact with her when she was 15, which is, even in Georgia, which is where this took place, that's below the age of consent, but he knew what he was doing. He knew that she would turn 16 soon, which in Georgia is the age of consent. And then he said, hey, you're old enough now. We can do whatever we want, or I can do whatever I want to you. So why don't you come and live with me and we'll have our little BDSM fun. Oh, I'll stop whenever you want me to. It's all fun and games. Yeah, well, there were a lot of games, but not a damn one of them was fun. Because Wissolofsky almost immediately began to ignore whatever little rules they had to their BDSM games, and he resorted to physical violence whenever this girl refused to do what he said, and he would force feed her, which is doubly ironic when you think about it, because the entire reason he was able to get his mitts on her in the first place was because she was insecure about herself. She had body image issues. Apparently she was anorexic, and this guy was telling her, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. So when he got her home and got her in the cage, he's force feeding her when he wasn't sexually assaulting her as punishment for disobeying him. And this guy was doing this to her for a year, over a year. He was subjecting her to water torture and a whole bunch of stuff. But the court said, well, you know, you did volunteer to go with this guy, and amazing, isn't it? See, if you have a black person who's been killed by a white police officer, the court never tries to figure out how do we take the defendant and make sure that he goes to prison. But if you have a white person who's on trial for doing something or anything, the court's immediately going, what's wrong? Was it your childhood? Did you not get the right color bike? And this is in Georgia. It's supposed to be the Bible Belt. It's supposed to be where the good old boys, Republicans, we don't tolerate no law breaking around here. Well, we don't tolerate it unless it's a black person who we've accused. Now, if you're white, you can do whatever the word you want, but everybody else, especially you niggers, y'all better watch out. This is who the judge called himself sympathizing with. Now, he had been found guilty and sentenced to 10 years in prison, but the judge decided that, well, this happens to be a white offender, so we've been a little bit harsh on him. I'm going to quote the Gwinnett County Superior Court Judge Timothy Hamill, who during sentencing said, and I quote, I am not moved to give you first offender status. In my time on the bench, I can count on both hands the time I've refused to give someone first offender status. But there's something inside me that says this is one of those times. Well, that's just his verbose, blathering way, because he knew that this was going to be a problem for him. That was just his way of trying to throw a word salad out there and say, well, I think you're a bad guy, but I want you to be a first offender so that we can let you go immediately. That's the game that they try to pull. And if it sounds familiar, if it sounds like the exact same account that I gave you about Michael Cummins yesterday, it is. And we'll be getting to that in a minute. But this is what happened with a guy who caught a child online. He seduced a child online and had her treated like a dog in a cage, literally, for over a year. And even though he's found guilty, you got the court the judge decides, well, I don't like the fact that this white man was sentenced to prison. That's not what we do in America. We don't sentence white people to prison. Well, not unless he's done something way over the top. After all, this is the freedom that we slaughtered and committed genocide and enslaved entire nations for, and we can't have anyone taking any bricks away from that wall. This is a racial ideology that you see these judges and prosecutors carrying out. Has nothing to do with the law and everything to do with white supremacy. Now, this Wisielewski character I'm telling you about, he gave his plea just last week, and I suppose it was this week, because it's just hit the headlines today, when the judge decided, well, just because you raped and beat and sexually tortured a child, and now you've made it where she's got all sorts of debilitating medical conditions now because you've been torturing a child for a year, well, just because you did that, the court doesn't want to overreact by actually sending you to prison. That would be a bit of an overreaction. I mean, what you did, was it really so wrong? We want this guy to be back out on the streets because, after all, this guy has a history of contacting underage girls online and seducing them and sweet-talking them into coming to his house. Well, that's the kind of guy you want to put back out on the streets. You don't want a guy like that behind bars. Do you think it's about the crime, or do you think it's about the skin color, folks? Now, that was just this week. In fact, probably more likely just today, and it's not the only one. There was also another instance that's also happened in the last 48 hours in New York. You had a man, if I can call him that, by the name of Shane Pinch, and this guy had pleaded guilty to raping a 14-year-old girl who he met during his job as a school bus driver. Now, what this guy would do, according to the victim's mother, he bought this child gifts, and he invited her and other minors to his home where he gave them alcohol. This guy is in his mid-20s. He's 25 or 26, but the problem is even the media is having trouble trying to figure out how old this guy is. But one thing's for damn sure. His victim was 14. We may not know for sure what Shane Pinch's age is, but we know what the age of his victim is. And what this guy did was he raped a child. He raped a child, and everybody thought that what was going to happen was, since he pled guilty to third-degree rape, because after all, we're not going to charge him with statutory anything. We're not going to make it where we throw the book at him. No Bill Cosby treatment here. He's not going to be paraded out in front of the public like R. Kelly. No show trials here. We keep this real quiet. And it would have been kept quiet if the judge had not decided, hey, if Brock Turner can do it, so can I. Hey, that judge in California who presided over the Brock Turner trial, Aaron Persky, he did it. And, well, maybe those guys in California got him, but I'm over here in New York. Surely they're not watching. Now, in New York, you have basically 3 levels of sex offenders. From 1 to 3, 1 being the lowest risk sex offender, which means that even though you have to say that you're a sex offender, your address is not made public knowledge. They basically keep it under wraps. You're allowed to keep your anonymity. It's as if you didn't do anything wrong. All the way up to level 3, and that's the one where you got to send out the letters to any place you go to saying, my name is Shane Pinch, or my name is Brock Turner, I'm a sexual predator, and you might want to keep the kids locked up if you see me on the streets. So what happened initially was this guy was expected to be designated a level 2 sex offender, which in New York means that he's considered to be a medium risk. And what would have happened is his address would have been available to the public. Well, just like with our friend Wisielewski, last week, the judge decided, in this case, the judge's name is James P. McCluskey. He decided that Pinch should get 10 years probation. There it goes again. And he designated the guy a level 1 sex offender, which means he's considered to be the lowest risk sex offender, and his address is not made available to the public. So here you have, within the same period, last week is when Wisielewski pled guilty to first-degree cruelty to children and interstate interference with custody, when what we know he really did was he was raping a young woman for a year and torturing a young woman for a year. And the judge decides, let's give this guy 10 years probation. That's what we're going to do. We're going to give this guy 10 years probation. And then in New York, the exact same thing happens. The guy rapes a child, not even a young woman in this case. He rapes a child. And the judge says, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and give you 10 years probation too. And then you think about what happened with Michael Cummins. He's engaged in assault. The first time that he got arrested was because he was caught in a parking lot with a 17-year-old girl who he was not even supposed to be around at that time, and caught with drugs. And he assaulted his own mother and his grandmother. He tried to burn down a neighbor's home. He had stolen some stuff from some other people. And the judge last year, looking at this guy, decides, well, we'll give you 10 years probation. Do you see a pattern forming yet, family? And by the way, with this Shane Pinch character, the judge downgraded him from a second-level sex offender to a first-level sex offender because this was his first victim. He had only done this once, don't you know? Now, of course, what you and I know is when it comes to sexual predators, there's a big difference between how many people that he actually violated and when you finally caught him. It's not that this is his first victim. This is just the first time you caught him. That's what this is. Can you imagine if Shane Pinch's name was Shane Cooper? Can you imagine what it would be, huh? Now, this story, both of them, the stories of Shane Pinch and Michael Wasilowski, however the hell his name is pronounced. The case of these two degenerates getting these, not even slaps on the wrist, basically a slap on the back is what these judges gave them. It happens to make it into the media. It's making the rounds right now. And in the case of Judge McCluskey, you've already got people who are putting around a recall petition. They're already starting the effort of trying to get this guy off the bench. Now, the thing that needs to be remembered here is the white media was making much ado about Aaron Persky last year and how, well, we can't have Aaron Persky taken off the bench. This is going to intimidate judges. Why judges will be handing down draconian, overly harsh sentences because all the judges will be terrified of someone saying you're soft on crime. Never mind the fact this is not a matter of soft on crime. This is a matter of letting criminals go. This is a matter of people who have been convicted of serious crimes and the judges saying, oh, that's fine. Let this predator back on the streets. No, the white media understands that the laws were not meant to punish the white majority. It was meant to punish black people. And that's the principle that the white media was trying to maintain. Hey, stop saying to punish white offenders, folks. You guys are off. You white folks in California, you're off code like hell. That's what it was really going on. Yeah, but as you can see, Judge Aaron Persky's recall last year has done nothing to stop judges from deciding that they're going to give a slap on the back to offenders so long as they are the right color, no matter what crimes that they've been found guilty of. Now, until the white community gets honest with themselves and admits that the problem is a racist white bias that deliberately exempts white people from punishment under law, then the recalls will have no effect. They'll be isolated incidents. Yeah, you'll get rid of Aaron Persky over here, and you'll get rid of Judge McCluskey over there, and you'll get rid of whoever that idiot judge was in Georgia who let Wasilowski off the hook. You'll get rid of a couple of hoots and hollers over here and there, but ultimately what's going to happen is it's still going to keep occurring. All of these cases of violent offenders being given the exact same non-punishment, all of this happened in the last 9 months alone. From Michael Cummins to just last week with Wasilowski and Pinchy. And you can tell that this is no accident and it's also not something that's new. It's been going on a damn long time. Anyone remember Ethan Couch? You know, affluenza teen. He was that white teenager in Texas. He got all tipsy and drunk, and he took his truck out and also took out 4 people with his truck. That's what this guy did, but you wouldn't know that he was a violent offender by how the white courts decide to treat him. This guy fled the country, which, by the way, makes him a fugitive. But when he was finally captured, he was only made to serve a measly 2 years in jail. Then he was released on probation. Oh, and by the way, in case you didn't know, just this year, Ethan Couch has been allowed to remove his ankle monitor. And would you like to guess how long Ethan Couch's probation was from when he killed those people? 10 years. Now, the white media and their flunkies will try to say that, well, the whole reason that happened with Ethan Couch was because he was a teenager or his family came from money. Well, let's go ahead and debunk that teenager lie. I can show you chapter and verse black kids who are barely teenagers and they get tried as adults. And even for nonviolent offenses, they get treated like they shot the president. Now, let me recap Ethan Couch for you because I know a lot of y'all may have forgotten because there's so many white privileged offenders who get let go, you can barely keep track of them all. In 2013, Ethan Couch pled guilty to killing 4 people with his truck. And later that same year, the judge presiding over the case decided to give him a measly 10 years probation instead of the life sentence that he actually deserved. And everything was going fine until 2015 when video emerged that showed Ethan Couch and his skank mother, who clearly thinks that she's still a teenager. She was with him at a drinking party, and these guys are sitting here getting all sloppy drunk. And the fact that he was drinking, that was a blatant violation of the terms of his parole. Well, Mammy Couch decided to take her degenerate little psychopathic son on the lam, and they fled to Mexico because as far as she was concerned, well, surely he's going to get in trouble for this. He broke probation like a mother, so that being the case, we better get the hell out of Dodge. Well, Ethan got caught and got brought back to the U.S., where they gave him yet another slap on the wrist. I mean, think about how ridiculous it is that this guy had been already pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 10 years probation when he got caught. Instead of them saying, you're going to go back to jail and you're going to serve every year, every minute, every second of your sentence because you've shown us that you happen to be a complete lawless reprobate, so we got to put you in a cage. No, instead what they said was 720 days. Yeah, that's good enough for him. And they're doing this in front of everybody to make the point. Yeah, we see you're all watching this, and yeah, go ahead and watch this. The latest white privilege offender gets let go because he's got the complexion for the protection. We don't put people his color in prison. We don't do that. Now, when someone's given probation, that's supposed to mean that if they violate that probation, they're supposed to go to prison and serve out their entire sentence. Well, that only happens if you're black. And when we have somebody who's on probation and they flee the country specifically to escape the terms of their probation, the very fact that you flee the country, that's a federal crime. So where are the additional charges at? Have any U.S. attorneys slapped Ethan Couch and his mother with any sort of charges? Of course not. There were no charges, and there are not going to be any, and there's no politicians of any color in front of the cameras demanding any new laws so that they have the tools at their disposal to deal with the next Ethan Couch and his felonious family members. You haven't seen any prosecutors running on a platform of putting Ethan Couch behind bars for the rest of his life. The guy is still within his 10 years of probation. So why is no one saying, you know what, 10 years probation ain't good enough for him. He fled the country. This guy is a menace. He's a repeat offender, and he needs to be in a cage for the remainder of his natural days. Nobody's making a crusade out of putting Ethan Couch behind bars, even though that's the best thing that the public needs. And for that matter, what about his parents? Did you know that Ethan Couch's mother has broken her probation multiple times? Ethan Couch's father got arrested because he was running around impersonating a police officer. But all of them are out and on the streets. And don't tell me it's about money. Shane Pinch doesn't come from money. Michael Wesolowski doesn't come from money. Michael Cummins doesn't come from money. So they don't have that in common with Ethan Couch and his family, but the thing that they do have in common happens to be race, not riches. Family, I raise all of these cases to highlight the point that this 10-year probation ploy, it's not some one-off. It's not some fluke. It's not that the judges made an error in sentencing or that they had a momentary lapse in judgment. There's a program at work here. These judges and prosecutors, they are working from a racist agenda, not the law. They got their own little set of rules, and they've had it for a damn long time. This is what the injustice system is about. And you can tell that this is deliberate because of how consistent it is. You have 4 different instances, one in Tennessee, one in Georgia, one in New York, one in Texas, and yet you got it spread all over the country. And yet in every freaking instance, you've had the exact same result. This is not even the defendants who are acting like scofflaws. This is not even the defendants who are thumbing their noses at the public and thumbing their noses at the courts and thumbing their noses at the law. These are the judges doing it for them. Who the hell needs a defense attorney when you got judges like this? And it tells you that these judges, they already made up their mind what the sentence was before the trial even took place. I told you about the book When Corruption Was King by Robert Cooley. He was a defense attorney for the mob in the 1970s and into the 1980s. And I talked frequently in the past and will remind you here about how he wrote that his very first case for the mob happened to involve a mafia associate who was on trial for murder or some very serious crime that he was caught dead to rights for. And the mob told Michael Cooley as his initiation, you got to get that judge to let him go. Don't worry, the judge is in our pocket, but we need you to be the bag man. And make sure the judge gets his little envelope of money and also gets told that this case needs to go away because this mafia associate's connected and, well, the capos don't want anything to happen to him. So we got to let him go and you got to handle it. Well, Robert Cooley went to the judge and said, hey, got to let the guy go. Word from up high, you know. And the judge said, wait a minute. This is different because this guy is so clearly guilty. The evidence against him is a mile long and a mile high. I can't let him go without everyone knowing that I'm corrupt because it's just so obvious. He has no defense. I can't let him go. And Robert Cooley made sure the judge understood. If this guy doesn't walk, you and I will not only not be walking, we won't be breathing either. Well, you can guess what happened next. The judge, sounding just like the judges that I've told you about here, the judge said, well, though it doesn't please the court, is the judgment of this court that there just simply ain't enough to convict him, and we don't want anyone to break my kneecaps and give me some concrete galoshes in the middle of the river, so I'm getting the hell out of here. That's what happened. So you see, the judges are not concerned with the law. You're not dealing with some impartial arbiter of justice. You're dealing with an ideologue. And in the United States, under white supremacy, there's a better than 9 chance out of 10 that the judge you're dealing with is a racist ideologue who has decided that every black person must go to prison whether they did it or not, and every white offender must get probation no matter how guilty they are. They have already staked out what it is that the punishments are going to be for white offenders and what line they're going to use to excuse it. And that's the reason why they're not concerned about the public ire. They understand something that a lot of the white community is not willing to admit to. You know, it reminds me of a line from that short-lived TNT drama show, Public Morals. There's the laws, and then there's the rules, and in time you will learn to identify the difference. Under white supremacy, this is how the so-called justice system actually works. There's the laws, and then there's the rules. And well, when it comes to the laws, that's what we use against the black folks. But we understand that the laws are not applied to people of the right skin color. And by the way, no matter how much Sturm and Drang, no matter how much public outrage, justified though it may be, against Shane Pinch and against Judge McCluskey that there may be, don't expect to see any white liberals on a rampage or on some sort of jihad to remove this little bit of white privilege. Because the problem here is not whether or not some degenerates are raping children. Ethan Couch didn't rape anybody. Look what the hell he got. Understand that. Brock Turner, this guy didn't even get probation. They just let him go. Judge Aaron Persky just said, let him go, let him go. They know exactly what they're doing. This is about the skin color of the person in front of them. And the white leftists, they understand that. They rely on white privilege just as much as their conservative counterparts do. It's not about left wing, right wing. It's not about conservative, liberal. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It is about black and white. The society is designed to promote and protect white primacy, and that's not based on political affiliation or ideological leanings. That is based on race. White primacy ain't about what you believe. It happens to be about white skin color as the unifying principle for the European. That's what it's about. And so you got to make sure that white skin happens to carry a number of perks. And one of them is that unless you go and kill 7 folks, because Ethan Couch, he only killed 4. 4 ain't enough. Law's not going to touch you if you kill 4. You can kill 4 and they'll let you go. But if you kill 7, well, you kind of went over the body count quota. You're allowed to kill 4, but about 5 or 6, that's when we got to do something about you. So if it's more than a handful, now we got to put you in jail. And by the way, don't be so sure that Michael Cummins is going to be spending the rest of his unnatural born life in a cage. This guy could very well wind up getting some sort of 20-year sentence, which, when no one's looking, will be reduced to time served and he'll be sprung loose. Yeah, white supremacy is the law of the land. White supremacy is the law. And these judges are putting you on notice about that. They don't have to say it. Their actions speak far louder than their words. It's this sick mentality, this psychopathic racism, which is the reason why Joe Biden, a Pennsylvania Yankee, can be best friends with an arch segregationist and notorious Mississippi racist James Eastland back in the 70s. On paper, Biden and Eastland didn't really have anything in common, but when it came to the fact that they didn't want any niggers anywhere near their precious white children, why, there was neither air nor light between them. They were on the exact same sheet of music with that one. As with white liberals and conservatives, they cannot agree on much, but when it comes to their hatred and hostility towards black people, you can always find bipartisanship all of a sudden. Why is there no bipartisanship in Washington? Well, that's because there's not too many laws that are getting there's no crime bill to shove through this year. See, if there was a crime bill like the one that both Joe Biden and Bernie the bigot Sanders signed back in '94, if there was any legislation like that going through Congress right now, why, you would have complete bipartisanship. They'd be able to agree across the board on that. Republicans and Democrats would be able to come together on that one. Whether it's a white Democrat or a white Republican, they can always be counted on to eagerly reach across the aisle and push through any legislation that targets black people, and they can always put aside their squabbling in order to roadblock or to otherwise stop any legislation that they think threatens to punish white offenders for their crimes. Look at what's happening with meth. Opioids is an epidemic far larger than crack cocaine ever was, and yet you can't find any politicians who are saying punishment. Like a light switch, they've all started saying, we need health care. This is a public health crisis. Well, in that case, then you're saying drugs in general, right? No, just meth. Opioids is a politically protected drug. It's a politically protected narcotic. It's not politically protected, it's racially protected, because the people who are doing it are the right skin color. And, well, they're putting it right in your face. It doesn't matter if the drug epidemic is bigger than crack cocaine ever was. As long as the people doing it are not black, we're not going to be talking about punishment. Yeah, we're putting it right in your faces. Yes, the injustice system is nothing more than a black incarceration machine. And what the hell you niggers going to do about it? That's what they're doing. They're challenging us. They are throwing down the gauntlet and saying, fine then, we basically messed up. We made it where white immunity from law has become so pervasive that now you got a whole bunch of junkies and drug addicts getting strung out in the streets and public parks and restaurants anywhere and everywhere. Yeah, well, we're not punishing them. They're white. We ain't going to do anything about it. So, what are you black folks going to do, huh? What are you going to do? This is the injustice system in the raw. They've got their rules about how white offenders are to be treated, and it's a matter of, unless the guy's killed 7 people, make sure he gets 10 years probation. Doesn't matter how bad the crime is, 10 years probation. That's how you know that these guys work this out amongst themselves nationwide. These guys talk to each other, and they've been doing this a damn long time. So what that means is they went ahead and put this little sidetrack, this parallel system in place a long time ago. It ain't based on the severity of the crime. It's based on the color of the accused. You need to internalize that and stop telling yourself that, well, maybe it's a matter with the judge. It's a matter with the system itself. You're not going to be locking hands with some good white liberals, and maybe if we do a few recalls, that'll put the fear of God into them. What'll put the fear of God into them is punishment. But that's only going to come from the people who have been targeted by this sick white supremacist injustice system.